music's playing, but I'm not hearing it. That's really... Oh, you can hear it? Okay. Pull up the count. Let's go. Nope. That's good. Hey everybody, we are going to try something new now in this, we're going to do a soft open here to the live stream, so anyone who's here, thank you for checking out our live stream podcast for the Dragon Movie Guy podcast. Today we're going to be talking about the SAG-AFTRA actors strike. So anyone who wants to be involved in the discussion, let us know in the comments section. I'm just going to do a quick test here to make sure all of my shots are up and running. Time codes are going to be in the description. Links are going to be in the video description. And obviously time codes in the replay of this so that you can skip straight through to the beginning of the actual live stream. I'm going to do a quick side-by-side check
baby.
there. Woo! Going to do a quick... Oh. That is why I do the test. Why is that? Oh, that's why I have it up on a second screen. Duh. This is why we do the test. Yes, this is why, yeah, the test of the test of the test. Okay, got that there. Got the side-by-side chat there. Woohoo! Alright, looks good. So we are going to get going here in just a second, and thank you everyone who's watching. Thank you anyone who's watching on replay, and we are going to start here, and I'm going to do a quick open, and here we go. No, that's not that. No, not that there. There we go. Hey everybody, Dragon Movie Guy here. Welcome to another podcast for the Dragon Movie Guy podcast. Today we are talking about the SAG-AFTRA strike, the actors strike going on. The SAG-AFTRA strike is going on concurrently at the same time as the writers strike, as the WGA Guild strike. But this time we are going to be talking about the actual SAG-AFTRA actors strike. Say that 3 times fast. Joining me today to talk about the SAG-AFTRA strike is a friend of the channel. He is a YouTuber. He is a film critic. He does a live video podcast with his co-host Jim Chilboyko every Sunday, Monday night, like clockwork. This is a man who has taught me a ton about live streaming and OBS and has had me on his podcast a great many times. So please welcome back to the channel, Rob Kristjansson. Rob, thank you for coming back to the channel. Trying out some new gizmos and shots, a little bit, get that 1% better each and every time, and just trying to improve my OBS live streaming verisimilitude.
It all
experience.
gets better.
Yeah.
And sometimes it does feel like 3 steps forward and then 4 steps back.
Yeah.
But next one, it's like, wow, I'm actually now 4 steps forward and I'm staying there.
Yes.
Yeah. No, I you've been there on mine. I get it. You know what? And I think you deserve a round of applause. Your live streams, your live conversations just keep getting better and better.
Thank you.
That's for you, baby.
Thank you, sir. And
All right, enough of that.
Well, and as we note, I'm just going to go through them here. We have a lot of different shots too. We give you the screen here. We have
Whoa, fancy.
Yeah, we've got the side-by-side close-ups. This is the second time ever using this one. This one I think is a little bit more personal. Then we got our side-by-side there.
I believe they call it intimate.
Yes. And then we have, of course, our chat window. So anyone who would like to participate in the chat, please let us know. Participate. It's going to be up on the screen there. It should actually work. So, and then, of course, our presentation screen. So we got all the bells and whistles, except not the actual bells.
All the gizmos, man.
All the gizmos, but not actual bells and whistles. Yeah, that's to be determined. Still working on it a little bit, but So, how are you doing, my friend? How was your day, and are you excited for this weekend?
I am. It's a big movie weekend. I haven't seen them yet, but I hope to pick up both. Good grief! Oppenheimer and Barbie this weekend. I might even be able to do a double feature tomorrow.
Yeah, I was going to say,
kind of my tentative plan.
Are you planning Are you planning a true Barbenheimer double feature?
I may be able to squeeze one of those in, or Oppenbarb, Oppenarby.
Yeah,
which one I see first.
Yeah, but which one would you watch first?
You know what? What I'm most interested in seeing was actually the Barbie film. Not a knock on Oppenheimer or anything, but as I become more of an admirer of Margot Robbie's choices, I'm just interested in seeing what she does with it. I may come out of it going, well, that was a waste. But I like the way she swings, and even if it's a big swing and a miss, even that's worthwhile to me. Whereas Oppenheimer, much like I felt in Tenet, I was like, well, I know I'm going to see a well-crafted film. I know it's going to have a beginning, middle, and end. I don't feel like I'm going to walk out of there going, what the f was that? Do you know what I mean? So I'm cautiously optimistic about Barbie and a little excited. The caution is part of the excitement. This could be bad. It could be really cool. Oppenheimer, I'm like, well, I kind of know what I'm going to get. I feel like I know what I'm going to get. Who knows? Talk to me next week and I'd be going, wow, that blew my mind.
Yeah.
Does that make any sense?
Yeah. Well, it's tough too because I think not many people are mentioning Greta Gerwig, the director of Barbie. And, she obviously has been nominated for an Academy Award for Lady Bird.
Yeah.
She's an indie movie darling. So it'll be interesting to see how well she does directing.
Little Women.
Yes.
Yeah.
And for her to jump to the director's chair for a big Hollywood blockbuster, it will be interesting to see how the film is, A, and B, how the box office is.
Yeah.
Because obviously she's great at doing indie movies and doing Oscar bait, but doing a bigger budget, grander scale, epic scale
summer movie.
Yeah, summer movie. That's not supposed to make you feel so much as just experience. It'll be interesting to see how Barbie is.
No, that's a great point. I've been so, even when I hear Greta Gerwig director and Barbie, I'm like, yeah. Anyway, but when I think of the movie, I'm thinking of Margot Robbie, and I don't mean it in like a lascivious way, but I'm thinking about her as the star who drove that picture. She's definitely the reason it happened. It wasn't Greta Gerwig's directorial heft that made it a summer movie. It was Margot Robbie, and that's what's gotten me interested in it. But I'm going to have to keep that in mind, especially when I review it. keeping in mind it's still a director's medium, and yeah, Greta Gerwig, yeah, it'll be interesting. Like, why did they choose each other?
Well, and it's funny too because it actually looks fun. Which, when you're talking about directors that are used to doing Oscar bait, that they're not almost all Oscar bait movies are not necessarily fun. They're meaty. They've got great cinematic heft, but they're not usually just popcorn fun movies. And so it's nice to see that she didn't try and make Barbie something that it isn't. She's making a movie about Barbie, and it just it looks fun. So hopefully
that's a great point, man.
Yeah. So hopefully it will be a fun film and a good tribute to Barbie, as opposed to some sort of like Barbie's being abused and like some sort of like Ken is like on drugs and Ken's
I'm thinking Blonde.
Yeah.
Sid and Nancy.
Yeah.
Ken and Barbie.
Yeah.
Getting gritty.
Yeah.
Dark.
Skippers.
Well, I gotta admit, now there's a part of me that wants to see the Sid and Nancy take on Ken and Barbie.
Well, and we'll see that would
true romance with Ken and Barbie as they go on a crime spree.
Well, and the
American Southwest.
And the funny thing is that the version of that would be the stereotypical Oscar bait movie seems more like a great SNL sketch than it would be an actual.
We're kind of making fun of it, right?
Yeah.
But at the same time, it is interesting. Yeah. Is it a sketch? Could it be a full flick? Like, think of Heathers.
Yeah.
Where you start to watch it and you kind of go, wow, they're really committing to the bit. And that flick works all the way through, right to the end. You're like, wow, I can't. As we were talking about before in the digital green room, you only get to see so many wow films that own you that after you've seen them, in a given year. Yeah, Heathers. I mean, that was decades ago.
Yeah, there's a reason.
As a quality reference.
There's a reason why we can quote Heathers and say, "I love my dead gay son." Like 30 years later, because it's just the acting, the delivery of that line. It's funny. But it still holds up to a certain extent. So, the reason for our podcast today, though, is talking about the ongoing
thing,
the SAG-AFTRA actors strike going on concurrently with the WGA writers strike. Most of the issues are similar, but there are some differences, and we're going to try and talk about a few of those differences here today. So let's jump in, shall we? First off,
yes,
you and me talking about movies. Apparently, that is still allowed under the terms of the writers' strike. Not that I would let it stop me per se. Anyway, but according to an article on Variety, SAG-AFTRA is going to they're going to give us permission to still review movies and still talk about movies. And yeah, there are still some issues to deal with for members of the union of SAG-AFTRA that are news anchors and that sort of thing. But for the most part, you can be a news anchor reporting on it. But if you're a news anchor, like if you're the reporter in the movie kind of thing, like this is breaking news, everything's exploding around me, that you wouldn't be allowed to do right now.
Exactly. So there's some clarification and guidance to their membership.
And for most of the actors, the interesting thing is that most of the actors, though, are not supposed to be doing any promotion on social media. So not even promotion on their Facebook pages, on their Instagram pages, on their YouTube channels. A lot of these actors have their own personal followings, and if they're behind the scenes interviews, hey, everybody look at our filming of Barbie, and go on Margot Robbie's Facebook or Instagram or whatever. Yeah, theoretically, right now she shouldn't.
It's going to be her talking about the craft of acting.
Yes,
but not her good deeds, but not
her at
her flicks.
Yeah, but not her at the Malibu beach house, unless it's her actual Malibu beach house, not the Barbie Malibu beach house, though.
Yeah.
So, so let's talk a little bit about the issues, starting from the actual SAG-AFTRA, the Screen Actors Guild, American Federation of Television and Radio Artists. I think I got that acronym right. They have rejected all of the offers so far. The actual offer that the union is saying has been offered is a little bit different than what management has been talking about. They have different talking points, different, it's a little bit like politics.
'Twas ever thus in labor negotiations.
And of course, management has released fewer details and more generic, homogenized. Yeah. So we're starting with the actors because they're what they've released is a little bit more detailed. I don't think
they're very clear on their concerns.
Yeah, and it's interesting because the actors have laid out, the actors side, the actors union, SAG-AFTRA, has laid out a bunch of the issues as they see it, and they've also laid out what they say management's stance is. Now, obviously, we can't, unless management is saying it themselves, we can't really say that this is what management has said, this is what labor is saying management has said. But at least it's sort of a window into what the public side of the negotiations is saying so far. Along those lines, there is a PDF, and we have links in the description, in the video description, for all of this. The actors one is a 12-page PDF, and these are screenshots of that, so I can't scroll through these just due to technological limitations or risks. But as you can see, I have a screenshot of the SAG-AFTRA thumbnail. Interesting here. SAG-AFTRA is claiming pay raises. They say that they want an 11% general wage increase in year one, and they're saying that management is saying, the AMPTP is saying the most they could get is 5%. And 4 and 3.5% for years 2 and 3. Honestly, though, that doesn't even keep up with inflation. Inflation the last couple of years has been a little bit out of control.
Oh yeah,
yeah.
Most wage demands in economic crisis points like this, all workers usually want is, can I get back to even close to what I've just lost?
Yeah,
like in purchasing power.
And a lot of times in collective bargaining, cost of living, or a COLA, is a separate thing entirely. Like you see that with teachers' unions a lot. You see it a lot with different kinds of organized labor. So the fact that there isn't, at least, as far as I can tell, that this is not dealing with cost of living, this is just wage increases, is interesting.
Yeah, I don't believe their collective agreement, like I know, I'm 99% sure, the ACTRA, which is the Actors Union here in Canada, doesn't have a COLA. They really aren't. They have a. I'm not saying that they don't exist anymore, but they really fell out of favor, or really, management was able to roll those back in different times. So you just don't see them. You rarely run into them, and yeah, like you said, they're usually in scenarios where they can be legislated back to work, like government, teachers, stuff like that, where maybe they're not like part of the political, we're going to make you go back to work and we're going to tell you what you're going to get paid, but tell you what, we'll give you a COLA, limited because we're fair.
Like if nurses are on strike or 911 operators are on strike, that sort of thing.
So-called essential workers.
Yeah, which...
And
actors,
so-called.
Yeah, and actors and actresses, like we love their craft. That's why we follow. We do movie YouTube channels, but they're not essential all the time because thankfully, hopefully, no one's going to die if someone doesn't do.
Essential to the soul.
Yeah, essential to the soul,
Death of the soul.
But no one's going to die in the next 5 minutes because Shakespeare in the Park isn't going on in Central Park. So, but let's see, and then as we, so also interesting here, and both sides are talking about digital extras and AI, artificial intelligence. In this case, though, the Actors Union right up top is talking about digital doubles and having the need for protection of incomes and performances to prevent being replaced by AI. And part of this is the idea of not just being paid for half a day's labor where you go in and get your face scanned and then they own your likeness forever. And they can do whatever they want with it. They could put your head on a rhinoceros. They could put your body on a mannequin. They can do all sorts of things and not pay you theoretically. So that's what this particular entry item is on the SAG-AFTRA list. What are your thoughts on digital doubles?
Same thing. Now, as a voice performer, non-union. As a voice performer, I totally get why these guys are fighting that. It is a this is part of the existential threat that management is like, why hire any extra? We'll just scan them all once and do it all, fix it all in post. But I think much like the writers in the mini rooms and all the other AI threat there for actors, even myself years ago when I was first getting into film and everything, getting on set as an extra was an important way you learned how a movie was made and to learn the rules of set and how it all kind of worked as a production. We all got to start somewhere in the factory, and usually it involves sweeping. It involves sweeping. It involves the. That's just a sec here. It involves work that. Nobody else wants to do. They've paid their dues. They've gotten their education. And so for actors, extra work is really important because otherwise, how do you get that experience and a bit of that exposure to move to the next level? And of course, down in the States and even in Vancouver and Toronto here in Canada, but definitely New York, I'm sure even in Atlanta, like the bigger production centers, you know what? You're now just a working class slob as a professional extra. That's what you do. You're an extra. And basically they want to automate you out of existence and deny a path. It's not the only way you can get in, but it denies one path of becoming a professional actor, with lines and stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. And, honestly,
so I think that's part of what, and as a voice performer, again, non-union, most of mine's corporate stuff, although I closed an order, closed the order, I still have to do the performance. But for a sci-fi podcast, guy I've worked for off and on for a couple of years now, I'm like, digitizing my voice. This guy's a great guy. I'm not saying him, but it's all the talk in the VO performer circles about just, hey, I'll just digitize your voice. As a matter of fact, one of my peers, it literally some guy reached out and said, so anyway, I'm going to clone your voice. How much will you charge me to read all these words? No,
wow.
Like not even a kiss before the
getting right down to it. Well, it's kind of on the other extreme end. It is interesting too because there's been some reports relatively recently, of James Earl Jones selling the rights to his voice so that Disney can do Darth Vader even after James Earl Jones dies. Which, it's a weird thought, but, I mean, James Earl Jones is a man who's now in his 80s, and he has such an iconic voice, you know, whether it's "This is CNN" or Darth Vader. And Darth Vader, the character, can live on in video games and movies and streaming shows ad infinitum. The character doesn't die, I mean, even though the character has died. So it's interesting seeing an actor in his 80s think about that vocal legacy and how important his voice is.
And how he can monetize it.
How he can monetize it even after he's dead.
Because here's the thing, I would argue... No, I'm not. I'm going to make an argument. It's like, first of all, he, unlike so many other performers who have zero leverage and are not ever going to get a big check, it's going to be horse like Buddy got with I'm going to do this. What do you charge me so I can just have you on demand and never pay you ever again? It's like, I've got a couple of fingers, you know what I mean? Below the... Anyway, so James Earl Jones can do that. Interesting thing, though, is that as iconic a voice as it is and as iconic a delivery as it is, you know, he is not... You can get a voice match for that. That happens on Fiverr all the time. You know, this idea of selling that when it's like, geez, James, how much more do you need? Maybe leave some for those folks who could, maybe that's the way they get in, that they can voice match James. I do a great James Earl Jones. I do not do a great James Earl Jones. I'm not going, what about my opportunity? But it's one of those things. I'm kind of like, wow, buddy. I mean, you do you. I don't think Disney beat him up, you know. But at the same time, it's like, it's a little, I find it a little, not sketchy, but maybe a little icky, you know, like, buddy. And honestly, it still becomes something that is, and this gets into copyright, and how long is this stuff going to last? And at what point do we just say, you know what, that was then, we're going to have our own, we're going to have our own nice, shiny, new now. You know, like, I mean, I am so grateful I got to see that Star Wars was a defining experience for me as a 10-year-old boy. That said, I kind of feel bad where it's like, but I want my Star Wars. And yeah, you could have it, except that in Disney is unwilling to, it's like, no, we're just going to keep regurgitating the same Star Wars and we're gonna use this automation to not even, because that's part of the thing here, is that it's not like James Earl Jones will live forever. He won't. There'll be a file that will be unable to tell the tale like he could. Like, it is not just his timbre and everything. It's about the ability to tell a story with it. And that's, I think, going to be it's going to be like a lot of automated things. And I mean, they'll have, actually, I wouldn't be surprised if they just hire a performer who will give that inflection, and then they apply the James Earl Jones plugin on top of it, you know? But then even that, like, it's like, so that person will only be the actual talent then all of a sudden is the person who will never get the credit, never get the opportunity to grow, to develop, to become their own star, because they're too busy doing the hard performative work, the storytelling work, the thing the Gizmo can't copy, And meanwhile, the estate of James Earl Jones and Disney Corp forever will just keep the money.
Well, and to your point,
to answer your question,
yeah,
that would be there's my.
That wasn't the answer.
there's my feelings on that. Sorry, you were saying to my point.
Well, I was going to say to your point about future voice actors. They've already and Disney's even had to do this, where the voice of Mickey Mouse originally was Walt Disney himself, and obviously that's changed over the years, and we've had new Mickey voices come along.
Yeah.
Even something as simple as Winnie the Pooh and Tigger and all of those. All of those voice actors.
Mark Hamill's almost like defining Joker and the guy who was the Batman for animated. Would you have had that experience of this? Said, no, Jack Nicholson did us a deal. We digitally just replicate Jack Nicholson. We just digitally replicate Michael Keaton's voice. Batman and the Joker locked in forever, never to be a new interpretation.
Yeah.
Like that should bum us out, not us as that should bum you and I out as fans of this art form. Because all of a sudden it's like, well, why try anything new? We'll just keep regurgitating the same SHIT where we can pay low cost labor and we have this fancy thing that we own on top of it. And we don't need any changes. We don't need nothing new, nothing. And as film becomes more and more expensive, a thing to play in, and it already is. It's poor people ain't making movies. Like not movies that get in theaters, that threaten to get in a theater. All of a sudden it just becomes an art form that'll forever be like not even a corporate art form. And I'm like, well, I'm okay with not having a lot of creativity in the cereal aisle. Like, I mean, it's cereal, you know, but
serialized storytelling.
You deserve, sir. One of those. Yeah. Anyway, so that's, I think, the problem with any of this stuff is that it will disincentivize the folks with the dough from ever trying anything new. It's like, why? We just own all these. We own a bunch of plugins. We own a bunch of digital assets. We'll just keep spewing that out. And if we need labor, we can. It's almost think of a Greek performers, which always had the big mask on. You know, the people in the know knew who was really good with X and good with Y, but it was those performers like, no, you're behind the mask. There will be no curtain call. Go do your religious duty. Get back. Let the playwright take all credit.
Well, and that's an interesting.
He's the one who the playwright wins the prize.
That is sort of the interesting thing too of the Greek masks, the drama and the tragedy, or the comedy and the tragedy masks, because that's sort of what you can do now with digital face replacements. Is sort of a version of that, where you're digitally doing that to actors' faces, and you could theoretically do that with actresses and actors who have gained or lost weight or who have aged on camera. What's to stop them from doing a digital Sean Connery from Goldfinger and just putting that digital Sean Connery over Daniel Craig and having Sean Connery's voice going, "Yes, darling."
Well, I think I can imagine a world, and for folks who want. And I'm a fan. I don't want to knock Justine Bateman. I'm a big fan of hers. I like her politics. I follow her on Instagram. She is definitely of the, here is the real threat of AI. I would call it the technological extreme end. But I wouldn't put it past a studio to go, who wants to see Luke Skywalker, but with a young Robert Pattinson? Because we want to appeal to the kids today. Or their favorite, is it BTS? Isn't that one of the big K-pop? Yeah. Your favorite BTS performer, your favorite BTS member, or your kid could be Star Wars. I got to admit, letting a kid have the ride, I have less of a problem with. More the, hey, we'll sell you, again, and it's just putting overlays on the movie that was made in the 70s. Even now, you and I see a lot of movies, respectively. I get one or two a year where I go, wow.
Yeah.
Where you go, wow. And I am not saying I can't be moved. Guardians of the Galaxy is definitely in my top 10 so far of this year. It got me a number of times. Is it a perfect movie? No. But it's not a wow, but it can move me. I'm not saying I can't be wowed by studio product. I don't know about you, man. I still remember getting out of the theater with a buddy in the 90s on a matinee at a second run, just because we were both playing hooky, basically. Went for lunch. Let's go see a movie. Do you want to work or go see a movie? Let's go see a flick. Went and saw The Matrix. Getting out of the theater going, what the was that? Wow. Wow. And that was a big studio picture. Was it the thing they spent the most money on? God, no. But it was still, that was a studio product. And you come out of The Matrix and you're going, holy
true.
So it's not just the indie, it's not just the weird or the Wes Anderson. Every couple of years you get, Wes Anderson. Just as I'm going to see Oppenheimer this weekend and go, I'm going to get Christopher Nolan, but that wow, that Nope, which was one of the ones for me of that year. Yeah. Was that last year?
Last
year, wasn't it?
2022.
All of this AI is going to make it harder to have those wow moments. And then, as a worker, it's it's not even, I've thought about this a lot, probably extras are done.
They've kind of been done for a while,
but it is exactly it is not, unless you're Sam Raimi, who really puts a lot of effort into his backgrounds. I saw a great video essay about just the guy saying, well, you look at a Sam Raimi movie, and we're even talking Spider-Man and that, how much life the background performers have, that they really do seem like they have lives, that they're doing stuff, they're active, and their behavior is interfering or affecting the lead performer's behavior, and it just makes the scene a lot more alive. The rest, actors, background performers, extras. To quote something I learned when I was in the industry in the late 90s, Phil, I think extras are done. AI is just you call it AI, but it's just more automation of a low skill. And this is not to say that these people have no skills, but it's an easy thing to automate.
Even though
I just need a few folks walking this way, walking that way.
And look, Even, like, for example, the classic example is sports movies. So anytime you have an arena or a stadium, you can't, even a big budget blockbuster, it's hard to have,
filled it. Or they took it from an actual...
like 80,000 people in a football stadium. Yeah. But even if you look at Rocky from 1976, obviously that was all not digital, but some of the background people in the upper ends of the stadium for Rocky even are just mannequins. They just wanted like a head and torso with a t-shirt on.
Well, look at lots of extras in all the Lord of the Rings movies. Lots and lots. That said, a lot of digital fill.
Yep. And you can tell.
Yeah, I think AI is taking over that stuff. Yeah. Just as, let's say, in voiceover, AI is going to take over a lot of the... I'm not talking the...
Especially here on YouTube.
Storytelling, but if it's... Well, you can hear it on YouTube, and it's so easy to dislike because it's like, oh, that is like it's just even a one line, like a 30-second spot. There's still a bit of storytelling in that, and the AI has not got that down, and I don't think it ever will. I think what it does take over is low-budget explainer videos. Crypto, boy, everyone knows. Does Rob swear a lot? Or is there just a technical difficulty? But for the higher-end stuff, you still need a human being who can see the words and understand what they mean to know how to tell a story and to bring something to it. So AI is going to take over all the let's call it what it is, like stuff I started out with, which is kind of a bummer for people who come after me. Like I did some terrible voiceover stuff, movie explainers, but they were all terribly written. It was all copy pasta from Wikipedia and bad Google interpretations for scam. I think they're a scam cash cow YouTube channels where I click on some of that stuff now and I'm like, oh, this is terrible dreck. And the only one who should do it is AI, even if it's mispronouncing half of it. It was all terrible to begin with. Well, no way it's got 1 million views. Somebody bought those views specifically to unload this dreck of a channel on some some person who thinks, oh, I really can pay $100 for a completely set up a YouTube channel that'll make me hundreds of dollars a day. It's like, hello, chump.
Well, yeah, and to a certain extent, trying to
sucker.
And look, we've had drum machines. People thought that drum machines would replace
sucker.
People thought that drum machines would replace actual drummers, and to a certain extent, especially on certain types of music, that has come to pass. But I think
become the art of the producer now.
Yeah. And
somebody's still got to set up those beats and everything.
Yeah, and that brings forth a whole new style, a whole new version of art, which is the producer, which is the DJ. Yeah. Let's move on. Let's move back to
the actual strike. First, our great tangent.
Yes.
Although this is a great. Here, let me give you another beep. You can use that as your cut point.
Yeah.
Rob and DMG go on an AI tangent.
So, continuing to talk about some of the issues for actors from the actor's perspective. Performers need qualified hair and makeup people. I thought this was sort of an interesting one because both the actors and management, the AMPTP, are talking to a certain extent of not just about actors, but about background performers, dancers, song and dancers, and in this case, hair and makeup. And it's sort of interesting because the SAG-AFTRA is pointing out that they want qualified hair and makeup people for not just the lead actors, but for background actors and also for people of color. Because there are different styles of hair, there are different skin complexions, and to not have qualified makeup artists on set who have experience applying makeup to people of all kinds of backgrounds, different nationalities, of different shades, of different hairstyles, hair types.
Yeah,
that can be an issue, and
absolutely,
it's interesting that they both kind of talk about this to a certain extent. Obviously, the management side, the AMPTP side, is a lot vaguer.
We're totally with you, and we will endeavor.
Yeah.
To make that so within the constraints of operational requirements, budget, etc.
And look,
in other words, no.
Well, and look, we get it. You know, everything has a budget. It's not monopoly money. It's interesting to see the union SAG-AFTRA trying to make the bigger tent, trying to include everyone to get people on their side in terms of negotiations.
Yeah.
So, and honestly, would makeup artists be even covered under SAG-AFTRA in this case?
No, okay, at least, and I'm 99% sure. Actually, no, I do know for a fact, both in North America, or let's say Can-Am, not sure about Mexico, but in what LA refers to as the domestic market, Canada and the United States, IATSE, International Alliance of Theatrical Stage Employees, hair makeup is in that union.
So not SAG-AFTRA.
Not SAG-AFTRA, but I get why, because here's the thing that happens. The lower the budget you go, the more it's, again, going back to these extras, because they ain't getting a ride to work. They may have to show up hours before they're needed, and then literally, be prepared to do your own makeup.
Yeah.
You know, so all of a sudden you got to pay for it, and all that costs. You know, it all costs. So all of a sudden you're at the lowest earning level and you have to bring all your consumables, you know? So I think some of it's probably got to do with that. Because I do know that does happen. You know, that it's like, you have to, like, if you're in a real indie, it's like, you hire actors who can do their own hair makeup because, you can't afford anything.
Well, and let's be honest, too.
But then all of a sudden, though, that, like, how do what were you going to say?
Well, I was going to say, too, let's be honest, too. I mean, we can sit here and say, well, yes, of course they should have hair and makeup for every single background actor. But
I don't think they're saying that.
Well,
what they want, maybe like a minimum. What if it's a real negotiation? They say, hey, at this budget level, with these many bodies, there should be one hair and makeup person for every 10 or every 100, whatever that number is. But there should be a qualified pro to take care of that instead of fobbing it off on these people who can't afford it and may not be able to do it.
Yes, and it's
or
easy.
African American, and nobody wants to light them properly either. It's like,
and as far as hair and makeup, I think it's interesting that SAG-AFTRA would be including hair and makeup when they don't cover hair and makeup under their membership.
But it's their it affects their members.
Oh yeah,
right?
of course. Like but it's a bit of a paper tiger. And
I suspect it's not necessarily the top of mind. Like, if that doesn't make it, but it has a direct impact on the working conditions of their members. Like, I don't see them just pulling that out of their ASS. I see them going, for sakes, can we get decent up, not somebody's cousin or somebody who can do good makeup, like from a salon or something, is not the same as a movie and TV professional, right? Like, I mean, yeah, it's not the same. They can't do it as quick. They can't, and they're looking for different things, right?
Well, but the other thing that interests me is, it's one thing for us to say we support higher wages and all this stuff, but how much of this, especially the hair and makeup and especially the background performance, how much of this makes smaller movies, not student films, because that wouldn't be covered, but smaller movies, indie movies, how much of this makes indie movies harder to produce? How much of this makes...
They're not even... Those are all non-union anyway. This is not... No, this is... I don't think it's a paper tiger. I don't think it's a paper tiger at all. Yeah, will it make the movie more expensive? Yes. The argument from the WGA and SAG-AFTRA is that there is money there. These just don't want to spend it.
But the question is, though, how many movies will not get made then? Because
I think their argument is the same number will still get made because they've got a pipeline they need to fill. It will be just that the money that's being made, the billions upon billions, that less of that will go to the producers and more of that will come to labor. That is their argument. The AMPTP, the producers, their argument is always, if we pay you more, then we'll have to pay that person less, or maybe it just won't get done. I'm with the unions on that one. I think that's and when they're talking about the real indies, when I said, the true indie, the tiny little nothing of a film, even if it's got $1 million budget, let's say, is like, yeah, there's a good chance maybe the actors are union, but they're already, because all these unions negotiate these or have different template agreements based on budget. And so it's like, okay, well, you're this. So, all right, we have a teacup ride for you. You know what? We got teacup rates. And we get that you will not have the same resources, but what they're concerned with is, like all these moves, is it's the big budget ones going, Netflix, we're just a tiny little streamer. Won't someone think of us? And our billions upon billions share value. Won't someone think of us as we bring in billions? But I think that's really the issue. If do I think that that's a hill they're going to die on? No, but if they can get it.
Well, like for example, do we think that
because all of a sudden their working conditions, because that's more of an issue about working conditions. If the actors' working conditions get better, then they're representing their members better.
But the question there too is, does that, as we've seen the death of the mid-budget movie, because the mid-budget movie has really turned into streaming shows, limited series, does that continue where we're getting fewer and fewer episode counts, which is sort of the problem with that?
Well, again, I give you the same answer I gave you before. The question is predicated upon the scarcity of funds, whereas I am I agree with the economic analysis both the writers and the actors, these unions have done, where they're like, listen, if you look at the whole pot of money, that's grown into a rather monstrous thing. And these guys just need to share more of it, and and there's two ways that money can be shared with the people who make it. better working conditions, and this relates to working conditions, and just plain more money. And it comes down to, and then of course the producers forever, even though their share prices are solid, none of these places are going under. They're making money every now and then. Like Braun, I guess, BRON, that Braun producer.
James.
Not
Scott.
LeBron James.
Braun is owned by LeBron James.
Is he? They just claimed bankruptcy. I didn't know that. One of the investors. Poor LeBron. Will he be able to?
Oh,
will he somehow manage? But you know what? There's always these smaller players. They do well, and then they don't do well. But the whole pie is so much bigger than it was that the unions are arguing. It's like, nah, you just need to share more with us. You've gotten a great deal. We have been, by not charging you what we would charge the broadcast network, we have subsidized the growth of streamers. Now we're like, it's time to collect.
And honestly, the streamers are owned by all the big networks and corporations.
Exactly. Because it's again, it's not like they're like, oh, this is a terrible investment and we're all dying. It's like, no, it's changing. But you don't invest in something because, well, unless you're a Tesla investor, but there's the money's there, and now that this is SAG-AFTRA, this is the actors and the writers going, enough. That is my feeling on it. Is that there is enough money, the producers just need to cut the check. The same number of movies will be made. That's my speculation based on the math I have seen. That doesn't mean I could be wrong. You know what? Maybe the whole thing's about to go under, but well then it goes under. If less movies get made because nobody's watching it, well, that's a problem that has nothing to do with what the unions want and what the producers want. Like, that's just that we're not watching movies anymore. It's just not a good business anymore. And then it'll die because it should die. Like,
and then the union has to come back to the table anyway and say, hey, we need to have concessions.
It'll be just different. It'll be like theaters, still got a lot of theaters, but it's not like vaudeville, like, and I would actually argue movies have fundamentally morphed over the last, since the breakup of the big verticals back in the 40s, but
in the television in the 50s and 60s,
well, technological change, economics, all these things, right? This is just, it's forever. It's an evolving thing, right? But yeah, if it really isn't the money, then some will go under and there'll be less movies. But never, like, I cannot think of a business that was actually truly broken. Like a business, an industry broken because labor was just wanted too much. I know it's a great talking point, but actual demonstrated, that's what broke them, was the workers' greed? Or was it the employers like kind of going, we can change how we do things so we don't need you at all? Or,
well, no, that's not what I was referring to. I was referring what I was referring to, though, was not the workers being too greedy. What I was referring to was the collapse in the business model as a whole, where no one is watching movies because they're so expensive to watch, and therefore it destroys the entire business, then forcing management and
then it should
labor to come back.
Then it should die. I still mean that. Like, here's the thing. No one's talking about raising prices. Although, who knows? Like, we're spending more on this than we did before. You look up the cost of your internet and then all the services, and all of a sudden you're looking at, it's like, oh my God, I'm paying more than I did for like deluxe cable. And I thought I was getting there. Never mind screwed. I thought I was getting I don't see so wages go up. The employer has two choices, right? Say they agree to it or whatever they come to, costs go up. The labor costs go up. They can respond in a million ways. They still have all the choices, right? They can charge more. They can accept lower profits. They can make less product. The consumers are making choices as well. But I think the consumers aren't really thinking about, of the hundreds of films that are made in a year, most consumers see 10% of that, maybe. They'll see a lot of television, but are they making those choices like they're rational economic players? No, they're like, is it good? They'll pay for it and they'll watch it.
And honestly, too, even if we just look at something as simple as coffee, someone else who wants to come along and make a cheaper pot of coffee isn't going to be able to make a cheaper cup of coffee than McDonald's or Dunkin' Donuts, but you can make a more expensive one like Starbucks. Whereas people aren't, for some reason, don't want to pay 40
to a degree.
But if you look at McDonald's and they have a 49-cent cup of coffee, or Dunkin' Donuts 49-cent cup of coffee, people don't want to pay 55 cents. Oh my God, they raised prices. But if you make it artisanal or gourmet, then all of a sudden, when they don't want to pay 55 cents for that $49 cup of coffee,
do they stop paying the 55 cents?
No, but
do they actually
pay $5?
Go, I don't want to.
No, but what they do is they pay $5 for a cup of coffee at Starbucks.
But I even think that the 49 to 55 cent thing is something that most, prices do go up. If wages are going up at a pari passu level, or maybe even wages are going up higher than those prices are going up. Like I said, there's multiple ways that the owners can react to paying higher wages. You know what? They can change the way they make a movie. And hire or less. But even that, I don't think is terrible. At least the people who are working can make a decent living. If it's, we're paid, but look at all the people we employ. What with wages, they're never getting ahead. Like it's like you're trapping labor in an unproductive activity just so some rich can, have it all. Or they can accept less. And a lot of times they'll accept less because they're competing with other players. They'll go, you know what? We're still doing okay here. Like I've never seen this before in my life. I mean, everyone gets worried about, you can't cross the picket line. But oh God, everyone's like, but no, keep buying their product, please. I'm like, why would I buy their product? They're not paying you. Like they're literally now not paying you. Yeah. I feel bad giving that rich money when you're hungry. Especially when that rich has literally said, we're going to wait until they lose their houses. Like,
Bob Iger. The Bob Iger, Fran Drescher kind of back and forth.
Money.
Yeah.
A monstrous pile of money that that their children's children will not be able to piss away unless they get an Elon Musk in the mix.
Yeah. True.
Could not reasonably be frittered away. We'll sit there and go, I'll wait until you lose your house. Like, that's who they're dealing with. These aren't people that are like, it's, you know what? They're, those guys. You know what? So yeah, there you go. But back to your question about the business model and everything. Well, maybe the business model is wrong.
It needs to adjust. It needs to change.
And it needs to, maybe we don't even know that. Because again, I do believe the union's economic argument here that there's a ton of money there. The employers just got to accept a little less of it. Like not even a lot less. For all the numbers of billions and hundreds of millions being thrown around here, it's film and television. There is a stupid amount of money.
There's very few people going broke in Hollywood. On the company level.
I mean, it's hilarious. One writer, he's like, here, let's take these 8 executives. Those 8 executives alone earn $750 million a year. What? And back to Bob Iger, notwithstanding John Campia's love of these ridiculous executives, Bob Iger has written nothing, performed nothing, directed nothing. I am not saying that he is an ineffective executive. He's certainly great for his shareholders. But this is not the guy that, thank God for, how does Campia refer to him? Papa Iger? It's like, what the hell, man? Like, he has no creative output here. The thing we want to watch, he is the middleman to it. That is it. And the middleman to Disney, which is really just a whole bunch of, crying out loud. It's basically just we have money, we have lawyers, and we have intellectual property, And that's how we can say, you will pay this and we will pay you that.
Moving on.
Wow, that's earned that.
Let's keep it a little bit here. I do want to get to this point too.
Back to your agenda.
Well, I want to get to this point too because I think this is a big point here too. And there's been a lot of articles talking about actors and healthcare. And one that I came across was Connor Leslie, who was Wonder Girl in the Titans TV show on HBO Max, or now just Max. She's a working actress. She's got tons of credits to her credit. And she was posting that, and if you look at her credits list, she's been a working actress for 10, 15 years, but there's not a whole lot of credits on her IMDb page currently, 2020, 2022, and 2023. And she posted on her Instagram page a picture of her getting a letter from the union, from SAG-AFTRA, pointing out that she's going to be losing her medical. And she will have to go on COBRA, on extended assistance, basically, for medical care for her and her kids, because she hasn't made, I think the post said something like $26,000 this year. So the fact that here she is, a working actress, hasn't been working as much lately, and here she is, middle of her career, successful career by all accounts, and she could be losing medical.
She has become, people who would 10 years ago, she was a successful. If you and I were having a conversation about a woman with her credits 10 years ago, a lot of that would have been like, look at Man in the High Castle, not television, streaming, right? Like you look at some of her credits, but she would have been a working, say, TV and movie actor. She wouldn't have been making 26 grand. She would have making maybe 36 and not getting bumped out, which is part of the core issue here, is that the way they've gamed this system, and by they I mean the employers, is that these people who used to have a good, what most Americans would call middle-class income, they've been getting shoved down over the last 10, 20 years, and all of a sudden they might be working as much, they're just making a lot less. And because healthcare, especially in your country is so geared to employment and how much you're getting employed, like, how many part-time workers have a full health care? Not many. And she's becoming a part-time worker. Who was it? There was a performer. I'll have to look it up. Maybe somebody in your chat. Hey, what's going on in your chat anyway? Oh, popping the popcorn was in there. She said,
"Hey, like popping the popcorn. Hello, thank you for joining us."
I like the way she put it. She's basically, I'd like this to be a profession where you can or she's worried that it's becoming a profession where the only people who can do it are people who can afford to do it. That they're independently wealthy or they married well. And
which then limits the talent pool of the quality of the performances. Because for every Julia Louis-Dreyfus or Kate Mara, whose families are billionaires, and they obviously they are great performers in their own right, but for the people that are coming up that are, say, Hilary Swank, who didn't come from money, who then had to prove themselves as actors and actresses, were then robbed of those performances.
You don't have the buffer, Now most, the Hilary Swanks are actually really rare. And Connor, she began when she was 15. God. A lot of performers actually a lot of people in LA, unless they're crew, come from some sort of means, because it costs so much to get the training and to put up with all the other crap before you get in.
Honestly, journalism is very similar in my industry. Journalism is very similar. You don't really
these
see
are things that are becoming for rich people to do,
because most all journalists have 4-year degrees. Some have master's degrees. Most have 4-year degrees, though. But to try and find someone on 60 Minutes that doesn't at least have a bachelor's degree would be near impossible, regardless of how good a journalist they are.
Is it a bachelor's degree from North Dakota State?
No, it
doesn't.
Is
it a bachelor's degree from NYU? You get. And these are all costs, barriers to entry, let's say.
Broadcast journalism, though, doesn't really require an Ivy League degree. A lot of degrees can be gotten at state schools like Washington State University. Florida,
I'm not.
Penn State.
I'm just saying that if you mentioned 60 Minutes.
Yeah.
And it's like, that's going to be the. Oh wait, this is a flagship.
But a lot of the people
a lot
of the people that make it to network faster, better, aren't just the best people. They're the people with the most connections and the most family money, because they can go like the Anderson Coopers of the world.
That's what I said. This is exactly my argument.
It's a circular argument.
But let's not even. Where's the circle? There's no circle here. It's literally that. Like, Connor Leslie's going to get pushed out unless something changes. But it'll become, if it's already maybe not impossible, but it'd be incredibly difficult for, let's say, somebody from a working class family, loosely defined, to get in. It just becomes impossible. It's like almost the rich people will own the operation, and then they'll provide all the good jobs will be taken by them,
And the one or two
and
people
then everything else.
And the one or two people that do make it through are the exceptions that prove the rule, not the exception to the rule, for the most part.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But back to your comment about Connor Leslie. Well, yeah, that is one of the issues they're striking over. does that mean that I think all these unions should have had this fight 10 years ago when the WGA struck in 2007, 2008. But they're fighting it now as these chickens are coming home to roost. All these people getting kicked off because Connor Leslie isn't the only one. I've been aware of that issue, that a lot of them are getting booted off. And while the immediate concern from a number of these members, because they're all dues paying members, all have a vote, are going, did our union, which does manage these benefit plans, hires these people, sets up these trusts that run this stuff for it, have they mismanaged it in some way? That's an internal thing for them to figure out. In the end, it still comes down to this was not happening in the 90s. It's happening now, and it's happening because of systemic problems.
Well, it is sort of an interesting thing too. If you're talking about union votes like this, the vast majority of the members, at least according to these articles, are not the Tom Cruises. I mean, obviously Tom Cruise, Tom Hanks, all the big Toms, all the big Chris's, all the big Toms, all make pretty good money and are all members of these unions.
There's some managing.
But most of these actors in these unions of SAG-AFTRA are the working Joe actors. So it would be interesting to see when it comes down to a vote, when whatever the deal is that they come down to ultimately, will the average Joe six-pack actor, whose vote counts just as much as Tom Cruise's vote, will there be enough of those votes to approve whatever that final deal is?
Yeah. Well, but that's like any labor negotiation, right? I would argue, and this is where I think SAG and the WGA have done a great job in educating their membership, making sure that their members, because it's interesting. You see, of course, they'll have some name person, but people on the line know why they're there, know what the issues are, can explain it to their friends, family, neighbors, and strangers. Because those unions have done a great job, saying, hey, this is the issue. We've been listening. This is what we're trying to do. This is what's going on here. Which is why both unions had overwhelming, high 90s strike approval votes, because the membership is mobilized and ready to fight the fight. They are it's a bit of an existential crisis for both these unions. And so that's why they got such a high vote, which is why Iger and all the other rich eggs are going, well, you know what, the way we win is, that they're not saying the way we win is, what, we'll come to an agreement. There's a middle ground here. It's like, no, we're going to wait until they're hungry, that they're literally hungry, that their asses are out of their homes. And the only reason you're doing that is that you can look out and go, wow, we're not going to be able to manipulate them like we have.
Well, and honestly, after the writers' strike in 2007-8, what they've done, what the AMPTP side, the management side, the studio side has done, is they've stockpiled a ton of content, so where they can have new content being released as this strike is going on, and not have it on the studio side be as
I remember
effective.
The 07-08. Heck, there's always a push to stockpile content to make sure that the pipe is full. But eventually that stockpile drops, as worker savings disappear. Right?
But that's the argument, though, is that
last, right?
That's the argument, though, is when you have a backup content supply, that that makes management side able to hold out longer than the worker side, generally speaking.
It just depends. Like, it really depends. How big is that stockpile? Because they haven't been loading it up since 2008. Unless we're going to start to see a lot of, wow, that's a weird fashion on this actor who was kind of famous then, and I can't remember who that person is anymore. They haven't been stockpiling it that long. There's always a push.
If we see if we see the Batgirl movie coming out as the big summer blockbuster of 2024, we know we're in trouble.
Right? Like, I mean, you know, I think it'd be more along the lines of, wow, we're seeing a lot of repeats. Hey, yeah. I thought they took that off. Like, when we start seeing the stuff that HBO, Max, whatever the hell it's called now, you know, all these with these streaming services where they took stuff off so they didn't have to pay the people that they should be paying for whatever nickels they agreed.
Even the Max exclusives. Even a lot of the Max originals, Max exclusives, have been taken off of Max.
You can't find it. When they start putting those back on, like, re-released, then you'll go, we're running out of the fresh stuff and we're moving into the old warehouse.
Well, and the other thing that's been happening a lot recently,
God, they're gonna have to get a check on that.
The other thing that's been happening a lot recently with HBO with Max is, for example, Harry Potter, which is a Warner Brothers product, which is Warner Brothers owns Max and HBO. And it's interesting because they actually took off the Harry Potter movies from Max 5-6 months ago, only to bring them back a month or two later. So as far as cost controls go, it's interesting because even if it's your own content, maybe it's there 8 months out of the year instead of 12 as a way to cut the expenses by a third.
Well, you know what? They're going to be playing those games, right?
Yeah.
Which is part of the reason why these unions want to renegotiate, because they're like, oh my God, the nickels you promised to give us on the streaming thing compared to the dollars we'd get if it was on television, you're even trying to that. It's like, what do you mean I only get 75% of that nickel?
The other interesting thing.
God damn, it's only $0.015.
Well, here's the other thing that I'm curious about too, and this is another HBO Max, another Max example, is Sony. Sony owns United Artists and Sony owns James Bond. And yet, currently on Max, there are 7 or 8 different James Bond movies. So, how does content exchange between platforms like that, between those companies, how does that affect the rates that are being paid out? Is there like some weird deep discount where they're exchanging content so they're not paying each other as much, saying, hey, you give us 8 James Bond movies, we'll give you 8 Harry Potter movies to air on the other platform so that your viewers get more.
It really comes down to how effective, like what the letter of the agreement is.
But that's what I mean, though. Does that translate to less money going to whoever the rights holders are?
You'd have to look at the letter of the agreement.
Yeah.
Probably require a lawyer's opinion on that one. But also, like, you know, that's a lawsuit. That's not a labor negotiation. That's the WGA, which on occasion sues a studio because they're like, you know what? We're suspicious. So they'll sue to get access to the books that they're supposed to have that the studio suddenly said we lost. Or, what? You don't believe us? And all of a sudden they get to see, because that's within the agreement, they get to see the books and they're going, and then all of a sudden a bunch of writers get extra checks because the studio, we had an accounting error, you know.
And that's
what that'll come down to. That'll be if they were doing that kind of, we're just trading content. I suspect one of these unions would just say, yeah, you're still getting You're getting consideration that has a value, and we get a percentage of that value. Yeah, that wouldn't be a union negotiation. That would just be something for the courts to figure out.
One of the other big issues, obviously, there too, is streamers having transparency on their streaming numbers. And so
I think you and I want as critics, I want to know really how successful is.
Yeah, like Netflix being a prime example of
the
top. Well, when they say, when you have Arbitron for radio, when you have Nielsen for television, when you have box office numbers independently counted and verified for movies, and you don't have an equivalent of that for streaming, for Netflix, for Max, for CBS All Access, or Paramount Plus, whatever they're calling it now. When you don't have some sort of independent version of that, measuring viewership, measuring industry-wide metrics that can be measured, verified, and both sides can say people are watching, people are not watching, how long are they watching for?
And this is the killer. Like, this is the why I roll my eyes when I hear somebody, wow, how well are they really doing? And it's like, you know what? I do think some are like, oh my God, that really people watching that? But for the most part, they don't want it. The fact that they, right from the get-go, have rejected any sharing of that data and to place a real residual program like they had in the rest of the industry, it says to me, it's like, I doubt it's like that's news. It's kind of like all Hollywood accounting. Every movie's lost money as we drive by the ridiculous houses, right?
Yeah.
Coming to America, lost money, not wished. Eked out a bare existence. Like, they don't want to share that data because they don't want anyone to know just how popular X or Y is. Yeah, there's going to be some where it's like, oh, you sold us some there. I knew that thing sucked wind, that nobody watched it. But mostly it's going to be the other side where people are watching this thing, or they're watching it a lot and they don't want to share that information because it's going to cost them money.
And look,
and now
we know that they have the viewership numbers. We're YouTubers, so we don't get all of the numbers from YouTube, but even just us, we're small YouTubers.
We get a lot of good data.
Yeah. And that's just us as small creators from YouTube. That's not even saying that's all of the numbers that YouTube gets. That's just the numbers that YouTube shares with us that we can actually see. So if we're as YouTubers getting the kinds of data that we get, clearly those numbers are available and should be available to people in the industry at least. I mean,
yeah. Exactly. It should be out there so that these people can have a proper accounting of what is successful. Because here's the thing I think a lot of people don't understand is you could look at the residual system as a X actor, X crew, X, because they all have some sort of quasi-residual deal, a share in profitability that is always linked to the movie, not the industry as a whole, but the movie you worked on. So the writers, especially actors, directors. And the idea is like, oh, who knows if this movie, this television show, this thing is going to make. So tell you what, we'll pay you this, but if it makes, you'll get residuals. That's your profit sharing. And if it's a big win, everybody wins, which is how a lot of people had good, let's say in an American context, good middle-class lives. I'm still pissed that Dan Murrell referred to as cushy gigs. Dan, they were never cushy, short-term contracts, but the residual system was basically the retirement program, right? And if you worked on a stinker that didn't go into, repeats or anything, well, then you didn't make the big bank, because that's the risk everyone takes, right? And that's those workers sharing some of that risk. Now, what they want is like, you know what, we're just going to pay you. And if it's a loser, well, we were going to pay you anyway. We have to legally pay you, punks, you peasants. But if it's a winner, we get it all, Yeah.
Risk sharing, but not really profit sharing to the same
extent. Exactly. We will share the risk with you, but not the reward.
Yeah, exactly.
And that, I think, is like, it comes down to the arts. This is part of the language around residuals. Like, it's free money. It's not free money. They earned it in they're willing to risk on whatever project.
They negotiated.
The fact that
they weren't given it, they negotiated for it.
Exactly. And yeah, those were union struggles of yore.
Yes,
probably going back to the 40s.
So let's move on to a certain extent. Let's move on to the AMPTP response, and we're not going to spend as much time on this because, quite frankly, we spent 90 minutes going over the SAG-AFTRA
and let's be
side.
honest, it's 2 pages of them going, I can't believe you think this of us.
And that's part of the point too. Is SAG-AFTRA has a 12-page PDF. This is a 2-page PDF from management with very few details. These are bullet points. So the AMPTP, I've got a couple different slides here. Page 1 is the highest percentage increase in minimums in 35 years, which I don't really see how that's much of a brag. Second bullet point is a 70% increase in high-budget streaming SVOD residuals, 70% increase over what and to whom. And the third bullet point...
Still, it's like, from $1, it goes to $1.75.
And here's the vague, and it's management, so they're vague. Yeah. But the third bullet point is substantial increases in pension and health contribution caps. So it's substantial. We're not going to say how much, but substantial.
And not in contributions, just in caps.
Yeah, in caps.
It's like many crimes can be hidden between contribution and cap.
Yeah, and let's be honest too. Caps, as in teeth, veneers don't look as good as the real thing.
Good one. You know what? You deserve 2.
I'll be here all week, folks. As we move down the bullet points, thank you. Interesting too here. Management is listing as the 4th bullet point. Groundbreaking AI proposal protects performers' digital likeness, including requirement for performers' consent for the creation and use of replicas, yada, yada, yada. I find that fascinating in that I don't, and it doesn't really matter the business. There's management and there's the workers, there's the union and there's ownership. And it's always funny to see both sides. And you see this more with management, but you see it with the unions too. But you see people inventing things to give up that they really don't care about, just so that they can say that they gave up something in the negotiation. Well, we gave up X, Y, and Z when no one on either side really cared about that, but we invented something to give up to build up our case, to show that we gave up something. I wonder if management mentioning a groundbreaking AI proposal, if that's just something because, AI, CGI, it's expensive. So I wonder, and it's just me thinking out loud, I wonder if part of this is management inventing, but bolstering up the argument for AI so that they can give it up when they weren't even really all that serious about, in the near future, 3-4 years, the length of this contract, investing seriously into AI.
Yeah. You know, that you might be right on it. Like, I mean,
well, we gave up. We gave up the AI.
We took a pause.
We gave up self-driving cars. We gave up whatever. We gave up personal masseuses.
You know what I'm more concerned with in that line, but yeah, you make a good point there. It's because it's not, no actors are being replaced yet. You know, we have not seen that. And well, you hear me, I don't think that's going to happen.
And when they are, it's expensive. It's not cheap. It looks cheap, but it's not actually cheap.
Well, and so let's go back to this groundbreaking AI proposal, which protects, including a requirement for consent. I mean,
well, we know management doesn't care about consent.
Here's the thing about consent.
The Harvey Weinsteins of the world do not care about
worker consent. Worker consent. Yeah, you know what? Hell yeah, you're going to need Brad Pitt's consent, and that's going to be paid for if he even allows it, you know? Everyone else, well, hey, that's just the way it works here. You got to consent to this, or no one's saying you have to consent, but no one's saying we have to give you the gig. And so saying
it's consent, but is it informed consent? Yeah.
What is they? How is it? Oh, what is the term? Like, it'll be informed, especially the part where, do you want the job? Then you must consent to this.
But right, like background checks or something.
Yeah, exactly. It's the leverage is so high. You know, the employer has so much leverage with the vast majority of actors. Let's go back to poor Ms. Leslie, Connor Leslie. You know what? She's losing. So here is a woman who might be losing her health care if she can't hustle something, can't make something work. Oh, actually, yeah, they're on strike. She's just effed right now. What leverage will she really have? Even with some notoriety, she's represented, she's got an agent, got a bit of a reel. It's going to be hey, Connor, we really, you know, the agent, really this could be a great gig. It's a main role. We think it's going to really have a nice run, but I know this could be a deal breaker for you. Digital consent. You know, you got to consent to digital likeness in perpetuity in all mediums in the universe. And all of a sudden, Connor Leslie looking at her kids and doctor's bill, or little Billy might need to go to the doctor, whatever her kids' names are. I don't know. That's too much leverage. You know, that would be doesn't pass my sniff test. Well, do you want the gig? You have to. Well, hey, everyone agreed.
We're squeezing you so hard that you have to consent.
Yeah, exactly. Like, you know, it's almost to use, let's dip back to before Me Too. And some idiots still think this way. That a performer who wanted to be successful basically consented to the sleaze. Wow.
Oh, that's just the business.
That's just the business. You know, this idea that women have to put up with a certain level of sexual harassment, and it's not even there in any business where it's like, well, you see some of these older performers during Me Too who were coming out, like Catherine Deneuve and that, who are like, well, yeah, that's just the way it was. What are these women whining about? Where instead of going, boy, I had to put up with that crap, but no one should, you know? And I think this is just an economic version of that. Well, you know, give up your rights because.
Or the more modern version, Apple's terms of service. when your iOS updates. Well, you know, you've got to check off the Accept terms of service.
Exactly. Yes, we've all been screwed on this stuff. Like where we have to. What leverage do I have with Apple? What leverage do I have with any of these players who've all their terms of service are virtually identical for all intents and purposes? But I need a smartphone. This is not a nice to have. This is like just part of modern living now. So all of a sudden, to have modern living, I have to agree to their egregious terms of service. Yeah, exactly.
And even if the terms of service, and even if the terms of service were good before, and you went through and read every single line, when those terms of service update irregularly.
Do you want to keep using your phone?
Yeah.
The thing you're trying to use right now?
And then did they go full Darth Vader and change the terms of the service after you agreed to whatever it was before?
They're literally saying, we've updated it. Please review and accept or decline. I'm like...
We're all Lando Calrissian.
The reason I'm seeing it is because I need to use it.
Yeah,
which means...
In this analogy, we're all Lando Calrissian. We have all of the overhead of Cloud City, and Darth Vader has us by the balls, changing the terms of the service.
And what's the line again?
Do you feel you're being treated unfairly?
No, hope that I don't change them further. Something like that.
Fear that I do not change them even further.
Yeah.
Let's go through a few more of these just real quick. 58% increase in salaries for a major role guest star, high budget SVOD programs.
The devil's in the detail, but I get that. These guest stars who are getting screwed, like they keep coming back as guest stars.
Yeah.
But they're owned for a week. They get locked in. They're basically main roles, but not paid like a main role.
Regular guest stars, recurring guest stars. This is an interesting one, and maybe you can.
But
speak
who knows?
To this.
Like 50, it's a major role guest star. Like it'll be in the definitions.
Yeah.
And how do you define a high budget versus a medium budget, or like it'll be in the definitions, right?
Now this next one is sort of interesting to me. Limitation of self-tape requests, including page, time, and tech requirements, options for virtual and in-person auditions. This is interesting because it's not even talking about after the fact, after being cast, after acting in the role, This is just trying to get the job in the first place. It's interesting for actors. They're always kind of in a state of auditioning, in a state of trying to find the next gig. So is this like a big thing that management is giving up?
The abuse has gone way up. If they're really talking about limitation, then great.
And what that limitation is and defined as.
Exactly. That'll be devil in the detail. But these are almost like Daniel Petrie Jr. Claim to fame. Him and his writing partner, whose name I cannot remember, were nominated for Best Screenplay for Beverly Hills Cop. He was also the first big LA director I ever worked for my brief time in the industry. Here we are. Is it 2000 Winnipeg or 1999? Almost a writer's strike. Daniel at the time was the Writers Guild's past president, so still an important person on the board. And talking about meetings, because it was coming close, like he could direct, but he couldn't write after a certain point, and there's still edits. This is all in pre-production. Managed to divert a script, but I remember something I was able to bounce off my dad, and he bought it, old union guy. But he says the difference in a union negotiation versus a star negotiation is you're negotiating for a star for a movie, and you've agreed on the $1 million. Now the details are, is it one nanny or two? And he says, but the deal's going to happen because no one's going to blow the deal over a nanny. Union negotiation. And this is where I'd put a lot of this stuff is you've agreed on all the smalls. You've agreed on the nanny. It's the $1 million you're arguing about. And so the union negotiation could fall apart at any time because you've agreed on all the small shit. It's the big money that you're arguing. That's the real fight, So yeah, I think some of these things are like that's a detail to work out. Even the hair makeup thing, because it just doesn't add that much to the cost. Like by that point in the budget, you're like, you've spent the $1 million. You've hired the star. You've agreed. Like there's just movies are so fucking expensive, right? One hair makeup person or two, if that breaks your budget, then should the movie have been made at all? Or do you end up doing what a lot, kind of like what they did with Keanu Reeves, where he had his deal, everybody agreed to it, and then they went back to him and said, "Can we renegotiate your deal? Otherwise, we don't have enough for special effects. We don't have. Our budget for visual effects won't be as high." And so I'm sure he was like, sure.
And then trying to do
he's not sharing his pay.
Yeah, then
he
was
like
do guilt trips. Guilt trip the star.
I'm getting a rollback afterwards because I'm like, Keanu Reeves, all reports are classy AF. Yeah. But I wonder if over a beer, if you really were in a safe space with them, you'd go, yeah, producers are forever out to you. Anyway,
I'm sure
let's keep going though. This is,
I'm sure
I would say that's one of those.
I'm sure Keanu's response would probably be, "Whoa." the classic Keanu response. Whoa.
Hey, speaking of hair makeup, this next one speaks to this.
Yeah.
The 11% pay increase. Note the 17% increase for background actors required to do extensive self-styling, which goes to the actors' demand for just hire a proper hair makeup person.
Yeah.
We're actors, we're not stylists, and that'll be a discussion, right?
Well, like for example,
and what's extensive mean?
Well, like for example, they cloned Tyrone, is a sort of 70s style period piece where I'm sure they have a ton of shots in the trailer from They Cloned Tyrone of big crowds of extras in 70s hair and makeup.
African Americans must bring their big ass fro, wig, or grow it or maintain it,
And the makeup, different styles of makeup for different times too.
That's effing money,
Yeah, and then so interesting that management is not leading with that, but they're throwing around relatively big numbers. But it is interesting there too. The union wanting 4 and 5% ish per year. They're saying, and here management, the AMPTP saying 11% pay increase in year one.
Well, for
no mention about year 2 or 3, but
and it's for the background performers who are making, that you can make a living, but it's not a good living. And you're right. It's only 11% in the first year.
Well, but that's my point is that it's probably nothing for years 2 and 3. It's probably a one-time pay increase of 11%.
Yeah.
As opposed
for background performers, not for all performers.
Yeah. But it's that 11% once, not 5% a year, 11% ones, which somehow I'm sure the math probably doesn't add up, of course. First time ever fixed residuals for stunt coordinators. That's another one that I wish that stunt performers, stuntmen, stuntwomen, stunt coordinators would get a bigger part of the budget, because that is a huge thing of John Wick movies, of any kind of action movie. Stunts are huge, high risk.
It's performance.
Yeah.
And it is part of the performance. And a stunt coordinator, one of the reasons why a lot of stunt coordinators are also, you'll see them listed as second unit directors, is because they have such an important impact on the effectiveness of a sequence, you know? Yeah. No, I mean, again, though, well, they don't say first ever fixed residual. And even that's fixed residuals. This is all back to their, well, we don't want to pay any formula. We just want to say, tell you what, we'll give you 5 points or whatever it is. Like ACTRA here in Canada, a lot of, and I didn't understand. I didn't know this until I was in the local business, and an American, he was, when TNT was a thing. Is Turner Network Television still a thing? It's
still a thing. It's changed ownership a couple times, but yes.
When it was still part of that system and they were making their own movies and everything, this TNT executive said one of the things they liked about being in Canada was a lot of the performers, like, I mean, there's still SAG performers for the star stuff because, you know, hey, making a movie here. But for a lot of the other performers, they could hire Canadian performers. And the deal they had with ACTRA was what was called a buyout of your rights for a limited time, 5 years. And it was depending on where you, like, what's, are you at scale or is it a multiple of scale? Like, there was a formula, but I remember my one time where I had lines, so I was considered a principal, my one paid experience as a performer. I didn't just get my day rate, but I got 100% buyout of that for the 5 years. I don't know this, and this is, but a part of me suspects that because it's ACTRA, they don't necessarily have the resources that SAG does. And after 5 years, the pay drops off, or they're just like, they don't have the resources to really chase down the numbers. They don't have the resources a SAG or a WGA would to sue some of these.
So in your...
any nickels that I might receive after that 5 year limitation are probably, you know, like just, yeah, who knows how accurate that is. The accounting is.
In your case, and granted this is a while back, but in your case,
20.
So in your experience, in this case from 20 years ago, have you ever gone back and done the calculation for how much they paid you up front for that 5 year buyout? And how much you would have gotten had you not signed away those rights for that more money up front?
I wouldn't even know where to start with that. That's an incalculable because of I shouldn't say it's impossible to find out. I wouldn't.
It'd be a lot of digging though.
With it. It'd be a ton of digging, and it's more about the. For me, as a one-off, yeah, give me my money now. Robbie wants his money. But it's a one-off, right? As a whole system, like, no, it's kind of like, you know, you got money purchase plans for your retirement. What do you guys call it? 401ks.
Yeah.
And hey, the employer will match whatever you contribute, 100%. Or you have what used to be the norm, defined benefit. Always go defined benefit. Because then you're sharing the risk, right? And I would say, going back to SAG or the ACTRA model, this idea of, well, we'll just buy it out. It's like, well, but I'm never sharing the rewards. They're just piecing me off. They've built it into their cost structure, and see you later, asshole. Pardon my poor language. See you later, asshole. There you go. Yeah, but that's a great question. You know what? I don't know. And that would be more of an ACTRA question of somebody who was involved in that negotiation, which probably happened in the 90s or maybe even in the 80s.
Well, it's just one of those interesting things of taking a payout early versus long-term cost benefit. It's always interesting to look at those because, like, for example, if you're a lottery winner and you can either take half up front, or you can take the 25-year or 30-year payment schedule from the lottery. It actually makes a lot of sense to take the one-time payment up front if you're going to invest that money yourself, because then you have the money, you have control of the money.
Yeah.
And there's lots of financial advisors that say take the half now up front.
Well, as especially because they're the advisor going, and I will help you spend it. Yeah. Invest that money. They have a vested interest.
Yeah.
That isn't necessarily to your benefit.
Yes.
Notwithstanding their code of ethics and all the other BS a financial advisor can come up with.
True.
I mean, but that, let's get back to this list, because I don't know that. I don't know. And these guys aren't offering that. They're just saying, we want to pay you less. And residuals. Here, we got a fixed rate. Fuck off.
I find this. I find this part interesting. And this is, it's buried in the list, but this is, again, management trying to look good and trying to have their list be longer, even though it's only 2 pages versus 12. This, hair and makeup consultation for performers of all complexions and hair textures.
What does that mean?
Well, we know what it means.
It doesn't mean anything. It's not, we will hire professionals who know how to do this. It's, well, we'll help you. We'll consult with you. It's like, that's not even a thing to give up on. It's literally kind of like when they were first talking about it. It's like, well, we'll have a meeting. We'll educate ourselves on how abusive our practices are.
No, but that's sort of it's sort of the weird thing, because it's management saying that they're not going to be racist without even admitting that racism is a thing. It's not even that.
It's no admission. It's we'll consult.
We'll have a meeting.
We'll have a meeting. It could literally be, we brought in this hair and makeup person. Hello, African-American performer. Look, we've brought in a pro who will help you understand your complexion and what you need to do to make it film ready. It's like, wow, do we literally compound the racism? I think we did. This isn't even squaring it, it's cubing it. That could be, but what I just created there, as offensive as it sounds, could be in the dictionary sense of a consultation, kind of like how employers is like, you know what, we can help you with work-life balance. So what, lessen the work? My boss can't call me after certain hours. No. We have a thing we can send you to help you manage your stress. The amount of work, that's staying the same.
Yeah.
The calls at all hours, that remains.
Yeah.
So that's where I put that one, hair and makeup consultation for performers, not hair and makeup consultation with the producer to make sure that they hire the right hair and makeup professional. No. It's for you, the performer, because we care about you and your inability to add another job on top of the job we're hiring you
and
for.
What do you want to bet that their version of that is to have a YouTube video showing people how to do hair and makeup?
Then we can start cheaping out on how we
This is our version of helping you out by having a YouTube
and
video.
And even as they're listening to, they're going, wow, I think that's an AI voice.
Yeah. And it comes full circle.
There's the circle.
The circle of life and the circle of negotiations. I think that covers all of it as far as like, there was one other thing that I wanted to mention on one of the articles. There's 4 article links in the video description.
Yeah.
I think it was from the union perspective, from SAG-AFTRA. There was also mention of trying to get medical expenses for transgender actors and actresses and crew members to get medication and gender-affirming surgeries, medications, all that kind of stuff when they're on the road, and it's harder to get said medication.
Yeah.
As something that they're trying to negotiate for.
I mean, geez. How is production going to be affected in Georgia? Like some of these states where let's say their approach to this, things that would affect LGBTQ 2S and women performers, where it's like, you imagine, you're some LA actor, again, let's pick on poor Connor Leslie. Her or one of her colleagues, they fly out because they're doing a gig in that peach of a state, Georgia. And, would the employer be barred from, paying her flight back to LA so she could get, care for an abortion? Yeah, no. I mean, yikes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or for, care that's just plain illegal in some of these states now. It's like, and sorry, you can't pay for that flight back,
Well, to be fair, Georgia is a traditionally red state, but it did go blue last time. So demographics are changing in Georgia a little bit. But point taken.
Purpling a little.
It is, it's more purple.
Maybe purpling a little, but I mean, how much of that is also just, and I'm kind of like.
Generational change.
Is it also that some of the red candidates, Republican candidates, are just so out there that the folks that would normally vote Republican or those independents, self-identified independents, but they always vote Republican, or most of the time they do, they're like, I'm not voting for that wackadoo. I'll hold my nose and vote for a Democrat, or I just won't vote. I can't vote for a Democrat. Haven't done it in 100 years. My pappy never did it, but I just won't go. And that if the Republican Party can ever kind of swing back a little to the, swing back to within the Overton window, a little less of the really out there folks, that all of a sudden that purple state goes back to red.
Yeah, well, and even
and that's me just thinking out loud, because like some of these, it's purpling up and the demographic changes, and I'm not saying that those are wrong, but I'm like, part of me is like, I don't know, who is that nut? Who's a lawyer? Nut? No, nut. I'm saying it. A lawyer. His first big claim to fame was that he insisted on having the 10 Commandments outside his courthouse, brought it in, ACLU. This kind of gives him some notoriety.
Yeah.
Then all of a sudden he's running for Senate. At the same time, it's like, I thought he was hitting on me, but he was actually perving on my 14-year-old daughter.
Yeah.
He loses, and I don't think that was a Democrat victory.
Yeah.
That's no Democrat should be going, we're turning the state blue. No, you aren't.
Well, I honestly,
there was enough Republicans that were saying, I can't.
Well, look, it's one of those things where I don't talk politics because I hate politics, and part of the reason why I hate politics is that both sides are equally, and honestly too.
Well, you can tell I come from a different political perspective, but I'm just wondering about I don't think there's that big a change.
Well, like for example. And this is just personal experience dealing with both parties in the state of Nevada. Part of the reason why I hate politics is, regardless of what your viewpoints are, and everyone has viewpoints and everyone has different beliefs, but for example, part of the reason why even though I'm more left than right, when I would ask, in this case, the Democrats, why they didn't want a presidential primary in the state of Nevada, it's because Democrats and Republicans, but in this conversation, it was Democrats saying, well, we want to energize the base. And if you have each party quote unquote energizing their base, then you're going to go to then those policies are going to be driven by the most extreme ends of both parties. And that just as a general approach to life, business, politics, religion, whatever it is, that just turns me right the hell off. And what part of the reason why I choose entertainment and I choose things that to me actually are more interesting, even though they don't have. And part of that is too, it doesn't have the same impact. And
we just dedicated like 2 hours of our lives to what really is a socio-political conflict over.
Yes,
I'm just. I'm
yeah, no. That is true.
I'm just you, man. And that's actually why I chose that extreme case as. People will get, like, at what point is your representatives so just representing an extreme that the rest of the people within that tent are going,
enough of this guy.
I had a lot of, I remember saying to some left-wing friends here, talking about the case previous referred to, and I'm like, you know what, I am not sure I could. I am a left-wing guy. I vote a certain way here in Canada. And I'm just like, I got to have some respect for those folks who couldn't do it because that individual was just so obviously awful. Regardless, that's not a policy issue. It's like, don't hit on 14-year-olds. 14-year-olds you shouldn't be a 30-year-old lawyer, a lawyer in your 30s, hitting on 14-year-olds. That is not a left-right, blue-red. That's just, don't do that.
Yeah, that's
wrong.
That's all kinds of gross.
It is. And that's, I think, the real...
Well, but
the tragedy of our times is that these ding-dongs are getting in because of that being owned by really just a small element within a larger tent, And I say this as somebody who's quite left in a Canadian context. You know what? There's something to be said for, having to, argue your point within your tent, but also kind of going, but we're also just trying to, it can't be just my way or the highway, where you end up with, all kinds of scenarios. But whatever, not relevant to our conversation here.
Yeah, dialing it back a little bit. And that's
and it's been a great conversation. I didn't get a chance to say it before, man. Thanks very much for having me on your show. It's been cool, and especially on this subject because I think it's going to be around for a while, and it does have such an impact on this. It's an art form we love and love talking about, but it is produced by a business. And so we have some skin in the game, because what happens with this business affects the art that we get,
Yeah,
and how we think about it. So,
and honestly, too, if it is something that does affect us, and how we choose, as consumers, how we choose to consume entertainment, how we choose to. Do we choose to go watch it in the theater? Do we choose to invest in streaming services? Do we choose to spend our time watching what is being produced? And if it goes too far afield in any one direction, I think that answer becomes no. And if it goes too far afield on a wider basis, I think we're seeing that with the Marvel Cinematic Universe now, where quality has gone down and not as many people are going to theaters. And not just for Marvel, but from everyone. Well, if you look at the last month, as you were saying, there haven't been any truly great movies so far this year, or very few. And even those that we'd like, they're likes and not loves in our reviews. Yeah. And if you notice, especially since
I think
June
the strongest see it I gave out this year is solid see it, not.
Well, and honestly, too, if you look at Dan Murrell's box office videos each week, his movie money each week,
Road to Recovery is
the Road to
looking
Recovery
too good.
And if you look at June 16th onward, June 16th, so the last month, 5 weeks, the numbers for box office, and this is post everyone being out of school for the summer, have dropped. They've dropped like a rock. So I think all of these discussions over actors' strikes and I think it does have an effect on quality, and business doesn't have to be negatively affecting art, but it does. They do affect each other. They don't have to, but they do. And I think part of the reason why we're seeing box office numbers plummet so badly the last month, when it should be the peak of movie season, I think it's a little bit of all of that kind of combined.
Well, I mean, there's because remember, the box office is now an ever shrinking part of the pie. I mean, that's something when we focus on box office, we're focusing on something that just keeps getting smaller every year. And I want to wait for a couple more years to see how that trend line looks. But even up to 2019, the trend line is down for actual asses in seats. The only reason
the bits number. The bits number from Dan Burrell.
Yeah, exactly.
The butts in seats.
Yeah. So, but as a percentage of population, down. Like population is ticket sales the same and actually really kind of tilting downward. Population grew over the same period, 26%. That means less people are going to the movies at all. Remember Brian, DMG, when we first met each other, we'd have some of these conversations talking about a couple of years ago and, hey, what's it going to be like in the new normal? Dan might be tracking what the new normal is. It's just that it's just less. It's not even the quality of film, because we've been complaining. People have loved to, one of the things they love to do is complain. They don't make them like they used to. Yeah, back in my day, they made, I wonder if we're just seeing habits have changed enough now. It's one of the reasons these studios, because they have access to far better data than you and I have, they're like, no, the future's still streaming. We've had some hiccups and some bumps in that, but you know what? There'll be some movies that are seen in big screens. The rest of it's going to be in streaming. And this is going back to our previous, this is how we can grind we can reset the labor employer relationship in the new normal. Cause the one thing I would disagree with, Dan Merle, is it's like, what are you talking about recovery? Like, if it goes to where it was in 2019, we should be happy. It's probably going to be a little less. And then this year to year, it's kind of tougher. There's been no wow movies. Like, and that's because making a good movie is just hard. It's just making a good one is hard. And
that's what she said.
Oh, wait. There you go. There's your rim shot, my friend. But yeah, you're like, it's hard. It's just hard to make a good movie at any budget level. It's hard to make good television, to make it really good. It still great stuff comes out. But yeah, maybe the theatrical, the time of the theatrical release, we may be really actually maybe, but maybe we're in kind of an actual the end times of the theatrical release, and that it's going to be a lot more of a mix, and you'll get the Heirs of the world, which is a pretty good flick. I think I said it was a solid see it, but that you didn't need to see it in the theater. I didn't. Well, maybe did I even say solid? I think it was just, see it. You will not be hurt by it.
Yeah, no.
But, I mean, you know what? It got some prestige from being in the theater. And what was, well, you and I talked about this, that idea of, this is just a good streaming movie. That's all it is. The Spencer Confidentials, which, I enjoyed. I mean, I've seen some movies that's a streaming movie that would never look good in a big screen, Oh,
well, it's the whole, what used to be the straight to DVD is now the straight to streaming. I do think, though, that the straight to streaming standard is a little bit higher than the straight to DVD standard.
Well, I think it's because straight to DVD, like, I think of the straight to streaming, it's is almost like the old movie of the week. And I think remember those old movies of the week? I think 90s cable showed that you could make them good. That a movie of the week, without the restrictions of commercial breaks and broadcast standards, swearing, nudity, etc., you could make a really good movie of the week. So that means you can make a really good streamer. Thinking of Game of Thrones. I know it's not a movie, it's a television show, but wow, that's some top tier, really streamer quality. I know people are still paying for cable, but it all of a sudden HBO, the cable station, and Max, like at what point do you kind of go, what's the difference? I turn my TV on and I watch it.
Yeah, and you're right, and what that difference is changes over time, and is it even really a difference anymore? Like for example, we've been talking for 2 hours and 20 minutes, 2 hours, and in some ways we're talking on Restream. I have the free version of Restream, so what 20 years ago would have been thousands and thousands of dollars of satellite time. We're talking for free in high definition over our computers. And yeah, of course we bought our computers, but we bought our cameras. But other than those one-time expenses of consumer goods, of consumer level goods, we've been doing an HD broadcast for free on YouTube. So, progress does happen and the line does change, and
Well, and even how does our conversation about films affect films? And I'm not talking that you and I affect films, but you and I as a group, I think, do have an impact. But that's, I think, for another show that we should do on my channel.
Yes, absolutely. TBD, and very, very soon we will come on your channel to talk.
I think that'd be a great conversation. How the YouTube space affects how it's had an impact on film.
Look, I'm still waiting to do our 1% Rotten Tomatoes on your channel. Yes. You have my list. You had my list 6 months ago.
I need to get off.
With that,
I think I caught 99% of my vulgarities, my profanities.
Pretty much, yeah.
I get points for that.
Well, and I still say it's funnier with the bleep.
I agree with you. You know what? It plus it makes it feel like radio.
It does. It does. So tell me more about what's coming up on your channel, what we can look forward to seeing, and and your Fiverr services. Plug away. What are your wares that you can peddle to me today?
All right. Let me talk about what's coming up on the channel first. At Rob Kristjansson. I'm sure there'll be a link or some Chiron somewhere. As you know, I have been had a health issue, bit of a health crisis come up a few weeks ago, and so my health has been up and down. I have actually seen movies, shot reviews with my co-host for No Hard Feelings, for Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny, and the most recent Mission Impossible films, all stuff that I hope to push out the door in the next 48 hours. What Jim and I are going to be doing on either Sunday or Monday, we haven't figured that out. I'm not 100% sure. It may relate to Barbenheimer, Oppenarby. But
hashtag Barbenheimer.
Yeah. I got to admit, though, and so that's what's going on there. I also have a project with exploring a project with another somebody else about talking about how, and I kind of alluded to some of this in an earlier rant, how some of these franchises, whether it be the MCU or even Mission Impossible, the Star Wars, how much of the air do they suck out of the room and deny us? Wow. We're talking about, hey, are people going? Is part of the reason they're not going is they've got COVID-19 taught everyone that they could go somewhere, that there's other things they could do with their time. And now it's like, well, you want me to come to the theater? I better be wowed. I want quality. And if I don't hear wow, if I'm not getting that vibe from the trailer where I'm like, this is going to be an experience, I think I'm just I'm gonna keep my powder dry. I'm thinking of Ant-Man Quantumania. They got a great first weekend, but that movie did not deserve a second great weekend, and it didn't get it because there was a mediocrity, not a zero, but you know what, that was a disappointment. And I think since then people are like, kind of, listen, show me. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
That's something I want to explore. So there you go.
Yeah,
and yes, and what I do, podcast editing, sound design, audio production. You got bad audio, maybe I can help you with that. You got good audio, you want it great, I can help you with that. And I also do voiceover, including some character stuff, mostly in the sci-fi sort of genre, but mostly corporate stuff. And, on occasion, the epic voice trailer.
Epic voice guy,
for wonderful, for some wonderful American real estate brokers. But yes. Anyway, that's my story, my friend.
Nice. So thank you for coming on. Thank
you for having me on, especially this long.
Hey, I tried to keep it under 2 hours.
No, I'm
but you kept bringing it on.
I did. Yeah, I was passionate about the subject.
Absolutely.
And I had much to say on it. I'm like,
as you should be.
I'm appreciative that you're willing to. That's what I mean. Is I'm appreciative that you're willing to spend this much time on a subject I am quite passionate about. And that it was, and I appreciate that it was just a great conversation. I had a lot of fun, man.
Absolutely, and and honestly too, this is a subject too that I know that I can just go twist, wind you up, and let you go, and all that sweet airtime, all those clicks.
Yeah.
All I had to do was say, Rob, talk about unions.
Yeah. I did not feel like you manipulated me, but I do appreciate that you're like, who do I know? Oh, I know will have an opinion and will not be shy with it. Rob will not qualify, or his qualifications will be minimal.
Well, but you are qualified.
Non-existent, but
you're an actor. You're qualified. You're a union guy. You are the perfect person to talk on this very specific topical topic that it's in our niche. It affects what we care about. We care about movies. Yeah. We care about entertainment. Yeah. We care about television streaming. All of that, and this is a subject to which you are acutely aware. Sorry, not averse. Yeah. Acutely aware. You have strong thoughts on the subject, and that is exactly what I wanted to hear.
And I think you and I both, even, you know what? And I get how people can be sometimes mad because part of what's floating around in your brain, in everyone's brain, is rich Hollywood celebrities and their, at times ostentatious, grossly ostentatious displays of wealth and the nonsense about their lives that is just permeates our existence. That said, I think all of us, have some human interest in these people's lives, the vast majority of which aren't mega rich celebrities. They're the vast majority of are people like you and I trying to make a living and in a business that gives us such joy. And so, yeah, I think we have an interest in their interest.
And honestly,
if that makes any sense.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And you did inadvertently go over my adult film name of ostentatious in the film Human Interest. So, my short-lived career in adult film. Kidding, people. I was never a porn star, or was I? Ostentatious. And if there isn't a porn name for Human Interest, there's got to be some movie, I would hope so.
You would think. Well, I think it'd be more like this is. I mean, it's a real title of a real book that has been adapted multiple times by like Shakespearean types, but Somerset Maughams. Wait just a sec here. Of Human Bondage. I'm amazed that no one's remade that film, or if they have, of late, the last 30, 40 years, since Friends was big, since the discussion of porn became part of our common vernacular.
Yeah, it's called Shades of Grey.
Yeah. You can bring it up in a news piece and no one's going, what?
Yeah.
It's just part of our our regular discourse, that's a title that was changed. They're like, oh, I'm not being mistaken for that. It's why am I so into this woman or whatever? I don't know. I'm babbling.
I'm babbling
now, man. Get me to the digital green room.
Which in and of itself is a title. Why am I into this woman? So with that, Rob Kristjansson, thank you for coming on. Movie news you could use are the Dragon Movie Guy podcast to talk the actors strike, the SAG-AFTRA strike. Thank you for coming on.
You're very welcome. I'll play myself out.
Yeah, done. Thank you, everybody. Thank you for watching, and we will see you next time. See ya.
Bye, everybody.